Lunar Secret Chapter 3. Secret Moves. Ready. Alin wasn't entirely confident in Shannon, so she whispered to her partner in crime, who was doing his best to pull himself together. He'd already told himself, "Come on, it can't get any worse than this." But that was such a cruel lie. After estimating how long it would take to break through the wall of reporters, Shannon pulled out his phone and called his manager, instructing him to meet them at the back exit in 20 minutes. His years of experience and profession helped him recover quickly. He was already planning how to manage the image of himself and Alin tonight. The key was to get them into the headlines. Any woman by his side was bound to spark gossip. But this time, the one seeking attention wasn't him. He flicked his wrist to check the time. The party was nearly over. He turned to grab 2 more drinks from a passing waiter, emptied one in a single gulp, and followed it with the second to calm his nerves. He needed alcohol tonight to boost his courage, after getting his spirit crushed by the young lead actress. "All right, now act like a sweet little kitten and follow my lead, got it?" No director in sight, so the Desert Prince would have to take charge of their roles himself. The mischievous actress toned herself down from a snarling tigress to a little kitten. Alin told herself getting a boyfriend wasn't that hard, just bat her lashes a few times, exactly like Pyangdao said. Alin followed not far behind Shannon as they made their way through the crowd, offering polite farewells to both familiar and unfamiliar guests. When they finally reached the entrance, where photographers and reporters were waiting, Shannon turned, locked eyes with Alin, and gave her a small nod as a signal that their operation had begun. He took her wrist and led her straight into the swarm of press. The moment they stepped outside, flashes exploded and the sound of shutters echoed right away. The sight of them triggered the media to fire their shutters in rapid bursts. Questions were shouted, but neither Shannon nor Alin caught a single word. They kept walking as quickly as they could, offering only smiles. When Shannon's car pulled up in front of the building, the two slipped inside. After the vehicle drove off, one voice rose from an entertainment reporter. "Hey, they were holding hands. Did anyone else see that? Charles has a new girlfriend again. This is going to be the news." But with celebrities now leaving the venue, the reporters had to shove their gossip away and return to snapping as many shots as they could. Still, no headlines would top the couple who had just disappeared in their car. "Where should I drop you off?" Shannon asked, breathless, once they were in the car. No wonder he was gasping. It had taken real strength to get through that crowd. Alin couldn't help but feel a little sorry for the Desert Prince, who'd thrown himself in front of her to shield her from the press. "The A2 floor, please," Alin said as she reached into her tiny purse and pulled out her car keys, ready to leave the moment Shannon's car pulled up beside her own car. "You drove here yourself. What about your manager?" She shook her head at his question. "You don't have one, or they didn't come." "I don't have one." It seemed like a private conversation between two people, but in truth, there were the driver and T, Shannon's manager, who sat in the front seat, completely confused by what was going on but silently observing the situation. "Miss Alin, you really need one. You can't handle everything on your own anymore. This industry's packed with feisty tigers, lions, bulls, and rhinos." Shannon was beginning to worry about his pretend girlfriend. "That's exactly why I choose to hang out with a sweet deer like you. It's safer, don't you think?" Alin's voice was low, but it was enough to make T burst out laughing. And when Shannon glanced up, he caught sight of his manager through the rearview mirror, lips tightly pressed together, nostrils flaring and trying to hide his amusement. "Right there on the left." Alin was about to step out of the car when she suddenly remembered something. But the Desert Prince was quicker. He already had his phone in hand, ready to save her number. Alin was surprised by their shared thoughts. She grabbed his phone, keyed in her number, and rang her own, which was resting comfortably in her car. "All set. Thanks for cooperating. I'll call you later." The actress then stepped out of the car. But as soon as the door shut, Shannon lowered the window and leaned his princely face out. "Keep an eye on the news tomorrow, and drive safe. Bye." Shannon waved like a newly crowned beauty queen, making Alin laugh right there behind her car. Even after getting in, she was still chuckling. Chanon waited until Alin started the engine, then told his driver to follow after she drove off. T, a short man with wild, frizzy hair, then climbed from the front seat to sit beside him, a giant question mark stamped across his face. "We're in trouble now, PT." The Desert Prince leaned his head back against the seat and began recounting everything that had happened to his loyal personal manager. Outside Primprapa's office, her secretary looked up from a stack of documents and smiled the moment she saw who had arrived. "You may go in. Miss Prim is expecting you," she whispered after calling her boss, letting her know that Powida had just arrived. The tall model offered a thank you before walking past the desk. Even as a fellow woman, the secretary couldn't help but admire Powida's undeniable beauty and envy her. The gods always seemed to favor those with mixed blood, making them more captivating than pure-blooded Asians like herself. A polite double knock sounded. Moments later, Powida stepped into the office of Primprapa, a businesswoman who inherited companies built by her ancestors. Primprapa rose to greet her with a longing embrace. It had been nearly 2 weeks since they last met, with only occasional, short phone calls between them. Work had been chaotic lately, but when she finally spotted a free evening, she called and asked the other woman to come over. "I missed you, and I'm starving." Powida's eyes caught the Japanese set meal neatly arranged on the table behind them. "I didn't have much time today, so I asked you to come eat here instead. I hope you don't mind." Primprapa said with a hint of shyness. A simple dinner had to happen in her office. Besides, she didn't want to stir up gossip. Both she and Powida were too well known. "As long as you're here, I don't care where we eat." The way Powida looked at her almost made Primprapa melt right into the floor. "Honey, what have you been up to? You've gotten so sweet lately." She gazed deeply into Powida's eyes, wondering how this woman always managed to be the first thing on her mind the moment her brain was freed from work. "Why don't you taste and see if I'm really sweet?" If it was Primprapa, Powida wouldn't have said such a thing. Their faces slowly moved closer, but the sound of a knock on the door brought them to a halt. It was the same secretary, walking in with a folder for signing. By the time she entered, both women had already moved to opposite corners of the room. The boss let out an annoyed tusk at being interrupted, causing Powida to turn to look out the window, smiling to herself. Powida stole a glance at the businesswoman. Her Prim, despite being more than a decade older than her, still seemed more elegant than most women her age. Primprapa was married. Powida knew that very well. And yet she couldn't stop herself from falling for her. There had been countless times she thought she could let go, but she'd never once succeeded. And Primprapa had never considered ending their relationship either. And so, they kept circling around each other like this. Whenever they happened to have a spare moment, one of them would reach out, like today. "How many hours do I get with you tonight, Prim?" After the door was shut, the question came as 2 arms slipped around Primprapa's waist from behind. She glanced at the clock. It was exactly 7 p.m. "I have to head to my father's place by 10 for work. Can't be later than 10:30. She truly wished she could stay longer. In fact, she'd already promised herself that once this busy period passed, she would ask Powida to take some time off, and the two of them would go away together, not meeting up only shortly like this. "Then let's eat. Being this busy, have you had anything yet? You're getting way too thin." Powida tightened her embrace. The closeness made it easy to tell that Primprapa had lost weight from working too hard. But the older woman just said that at her age, gaining weight would be hard to lose, so staying slim was a choice. They just shared a few bites of their Japanese meal before the young model's phone rang. Primprapa shot it an irritated glance. Powida saw the name on the screen and couldn't ignore it. It was her best friend. She asked for permission from the other woman before answering, as if slipping into a commercial break. "Hello, how can I be of service today?" She said it, not expecting it would make the caller feel completely at ease, assuming that she didn't interrupt anything. "Great, come help me please. My car broke down right now at..." The full location details followed. Powida's expression shifted into concern until the other woman could notice it right after she ended the call. Well, looks like I'm not the one who doesn't have time today, Primprapa said with mock offense. Usually, it was Powida who complained about Primprapa's schedule. It's Oe. Her car broke down. She asked me to go help. Oe, or Evica, was a singer and Powida's closest friend. Given her curvy but not chubby figure, Powida worried about her friend's safety if she was left to deal with the car alone. So she had no choice but to cut short the precious little time of her. And P. Prim. Can't you send P-Key instead? Primprapa offered another option. Hopping the bold manager she'd assigned to look after the elegant model might be able to help. But Powida explained that P-Key had taken the day off to handle something urgent, and she didn't want to bother her. Primprapa walked her to the door. Still, her hurtful words made Powida feel guilty. You don't want to stay with me, do you? Looking for an excuse to leave early like this. No way. If it was Oe, I wouldn't go anywhere. Powida pulled her into a hug before she could say anything more. But just as she was about to kiss her goodbye, her phone rang again. Ring. Round 2. It was Evica calling to urge her to hurry. The road where her car had broken down was seriously deserted. Primprapa gently placed both hands on Powida's back and pushed her out the door. She feared that if they lingered even longer, she might not be able to let her go. She was starting to understand how bitter it felt to be the one left waiting. Along the road near her destination, not a single street lamp was lit. In the distance, Powida spotted a flickering light. That had to be Evica's car, and sure enough, it was. She quickly opened the door for her friend to get in, just as the service car pulled up at the scene. Next time, if you're going to break down, can you do it somewhere closer? Somewhere with lights, maybe. The one who'd driven all this way couldn't help but complain. As if I got to choose. Should I just sell this thing? It breaks down every other day, Evica muttered, frustrated. But right now, it was clear that her friend, who had just come to her rescue, was in an even worse mood than she was. Well, I couldn't think of anyone else. Who would I call if not Honey? Powida almost believed it. But the moment she thought of someone else, she could guess that her name had probably come second. Maybe the first choice was unavailable tonight. What about your roommate? What's the point of having her if you won't even call? She's probably stuck on set until morning. There it was, just like Powida had suspected. And once Evica realized she had let the truth slip, she tried to play it off by throwing her arms around her friend's shoulder in a sheepish side hug. You're in such a bad mood. I'm guessing. Evica squinted at her until Powida finally confessed where she had been and who she'd been with. That made Evica bury her face in her palms, embarrassed. She hadn't meant to interrupt her friend's moment, but at the same time, it made her feel touched that Powida had chosen her over her own happiness. As for the roommate Powida mentioned, Evica had to admit that she was close to her too. But with her model friend, she could be her true self. As for the roommate, even though they lived together, she felt as if there was still an invisible line between them. It still wasn't clear what the line was, but whenever she needed help, her first instinct was always to ask Powida, even if she wasn't the first person she called. As a famous singer, Evica was surprisingly easygoing. She'd eat anywhere. From tiny roadside stalls to a luxurious hotel restaurant, as long as the food was good, she'd be there. Sometimes people saw her and didn't even realize that she was a famous singer. But if Powida was with her, everyone would remember her right away because Powida's look and composure always gave her away. Tonight, for example, she wanted a bowl of noodles, but that wouldn't be possible. If Powida came with her, there'd be no way she could eat in peace. More importantly, she didn't feel like going back to an empty room tonight. Can I crash at your place tonight? The model gave a slight nod to that teasing tone of her request. You hungry? The one who just nodded turned to ask, having heard a loud rumble. If it wasn't her stomach, it had to be Evica's, with no reply given. Powida pulled over to park in front of a fish porridge shop, known for its flavor. God, no one knows me like you do. Evica's voice trailed off with delight. She wouldn't have to go to bed with an empty stomach tonight. She'd been in the recording studio since afternoon and still hadn't had a proper meal. But just as she saw Powida about to step out of the car, she cried out in panic. No, please, don't get out, you'll blow the place up. I'll go get it myself. The next morning, Powida walked into the living room, coffee in hand, with Evika following behind, stretching. She placed the cup on the table before heading to grab the bag of magazines she'd bought the day before. But by the time she returned, her coffee had already moved into her mischievous friend's hands. "If you're still sleepy, just go back to bed." She couldn't help but comment on the sight of her friend half asleep, sipping her coffee. Evika, meanwhile, spotted the bag and slid across the couch to snatch one of the magazines. "Whoa, this photo shoot is crazy sexy, honey." She opened the one with Powida on the cover. Of course, it was sexy. Each shot highlighted the jewelry, leaving the model nearly bare. It wasn't too revealing, though. Some garments had been digitally removed later to fit the concept. But glancing over at the magazine Powida was flipping through, Evika was surprised. It was rare for her friend to buy a magazine with someone else on the cover. But when she asked about it, all she got was an answer saying it just ended up in her hands. Just then, P.K., Powida's manager, showed up with an armful of newspapers and magazines. She dropped them onto the coffee table in front of the girls, offered a quick greeting, then disappeared into the kitchen to make coffee. That was her usual ritual upon arriving. Evika let her friend continue reading in peace. She had plenty to flip through herself. Most of the entertainment news was old, but one headline in a newspaper caught her eyes. The accompanying photo left no room for doubt. Reading it made Evika burst out laughing until Powida looked up at the sound. "What's so funny?" "It's Charles. He's changed girlfriends again. This time it's some famous actress, look." Charles, of course she knew him. Channon, the Casanova, once flirted with Evika and then ghosted her, leaving her heartbroken for months. The man changed girlfriends like he changes clothes. Powida glanced over and spotted Channon's latest target, and it wasn't someone unfamiliar. Alin Channon, the hot new couple to watch. With a headline like that and a photo of them holding hands, who wouldn't know? The only question in Powida's mind was, how many months would this one last?